The blood was still fresh on Victoria Pratt's sleeves when she stumbled into Clifton, Arizona, in the scorching summer of 1878, and the mountain man who watched her collapse near the water pump knew immediately that this woman had fought like hell to stay alive. Porter Reid had come down from his cabin in the mountains surrounding Clifton for supplies, a trip he made only when absolutely necessary. He preferred the solitude of the high country, the company of pine trees and eagles over the noise and judgment of townspeople. At 32 years old, he had lived alone for the better part of a decade, his broad shoulders and muscular frame a testament to the physical demands of mountain life. His dark hair fell past his collar, wild and untamed, and his weathered face bore the marks of sun and wind. When he saw the woman crumple to the ground, her pale skin contrasting sharply with the dust, his instincts took over. He was at her side in 3 long strides, his powerful arms catching her before she hit the ground completely. She was conscious but barely, her green eyes glassy with exhaustion and pain. Blood seeped through the fabric of her long-sleeved dress despite the oppressive heat, and Porter could see her arms were wrapped tightly beneath the cotton. "Easy now," he said, his deep voice steady and calm. "I have got you." Victoria tried to speak, but only a rasp came out. Her lips were cracked and dry, and Porter could see she had not had water in some time. He lifted her easily, cradling her against his chest as if she weighed nothing, and carried her to the nearest shade under the awning of the general store. The shopkeeper, a nervous man named Wilkins, rushed out with a dipper of water. "What happened to her?" Wilkins asked, his voice high with concern. "Do not know yet," Porter replied, taking the water and carefully pressing it to Victoria's lips. "But she needs a doctor." "Doc Henley is 3 buildings down," Wilkins said, already moving to fetch him. Victoria's eyes focused on Porter's face as she swallowed the water. Up close, she could see the concern etched in his rugged features, the way his gray eyes studied her with an intensity that should have frightened her, but somehow did not. She felt safe in his arms, which was strange considering she had not felt safe in months. "My horse," she managed to whisper, "left him a mile back. He is hurt." "I will find him," Porter promised. "First, we get you taken care of." Doc Henley arrived within minutes, a thin man with spectacles and quick movements. He took one look at Victoria's blood-stained sleeves and gestured toward his office. "Bring her inside. Quickly now." Porter carried her into the small medical office, laying her gently on the examination table. The doctor immediately began rolling up her sleeves, and Porter heard the sharp intake of breath when the wounds were revealed. Victoria's arms were covered in cuts, some fresh and others healing, creating a pattern of scars that told a story of violence and survival. "Good Lord," Henley muttered. "What happened to you, miss?" Victoria closed her eyes and Porter saw her jaw clench. "I would rather not say." The doctor looked at Porter, who stood near the door, arms crossed over his broad chest. "These are defensive wounds. She has been fighting someone off." Porter's expression darkened. "Recently? Some of these are hours old, others are days, maybe weeks." Henley began cleaning the wounds with practiced efficiency. "Miss, you need to tell us who did this." "No one can help," Victoria said quietly. "I just need to keep moving." Porter moved closer, and despite his intimidating size, his voice was gentle. "Running does not always work. Sometimes you have to stand and fight." Victoria opened her eyes and met his gaze. There was something in his face, an understanding that went beyond simple sympathy. "You sound like you know." "I do," he said simply. Over the next hour, Doc Henley cleaned and bandaged Victoria's wounds while Porter went to find her horse. He located the animal limping along the trail leading into town, its right foreleg swollen. Porter had a way with animals, and he calmed the gelding with soft words and gentle hands, leading it back to the livery stable where he arranged for care and payment. When he returned to the doctor's office, Victoria was sitting up, her arms now wrapped in clean white bandages. She looked exhausted but more alert, and she had been given fresh water and some bread. Her dark hair had been pulled back from her face, revealing delicate features marked by stress and fear. "Your horse is at the livery," Porter told her. "He will be fine with rest. Strained a tendon." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. I do not have much money, but I can pay you back somehow. Do not worry about that now." Porter pulled up a chair and sat down, his large frame making the wooden seat look small. "Where are you headed?" "I do not know," she admitted. "Just away." "From what?" Victoria looked down at her bandaged arms. "From someone who thinks he owns me." Porter leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "A husband? No, my stepfather." The word came out bitter and hard. "My mother died 6 months ago in Tucson. She married him when I was 16, and I stayed because of her. After she passed, he decided I would take her place in every way." Her voice broke slightly. "I refused. He did not take that well." The rage that flashed across Porter's face was quick but intense. He took a breath, forcing himself to stay calm. "So you ran." "I fought first, then I ran." Victoria touched her bandaged arms. "He came after me twice, caught up with me outside of Safford. I had a knife. He did not expect me to use it. Did you kill him?" "I do not know." "I hope so, but I cannot be sure. I took his horse and rode until mine gave out." She met Porter's eyes. "I know what these scars look like. I know people will judge me for them, but I am not ashamed. Every mark means I am still breathing." Porter felt something shift in his chest, a stirring of emotion he had not experienced in years. This woman, broken and bleeding, spoke with a strength that commanded respect. "Scars mean you are a fighter," he said. "That is worth keeping." Victoria stared at him, and for the first time in months she felt a flicker of hope. "You really believe that?" "I know it." Porter stood, his full height impressive in the small room. "I've got a cabin up in the mountains about 2 hours' ride from here. It is remote, well defended. No one would find you there. You can stay until you figure out your next move. I cannot ask that of you. You do not even know me. Your name is a start. Victoria Pratt, Porter Reid." He extended his hand, and when she took it, he was careful of her injuries. "And you are not asking. I am offering. A woman alone out here is not safe, especially if someone is hunting you. Up in the mountains, I can keep watch. Anyone comes looking, I will see them long before they see us." Doc Henley, who had been preparing more supplies, spoke up. "Porter is right, miss. Clifton is a small town. If your stepfather comes through asking questions, people will remember seeing you. But if you disappear into the mountains with Porter, there will be no trail to follow." Victoria looked between the two men, weighing her options. She had no money, no plan, and nowhere to go. But more than that, something about Porter Reid made her want to trust him. Maybe it was the way he looked at her scars without pity, or the calm strength in his voice. Maybe it was simply that she was too tired to keep running alone. "All right," she said finally. "I will go with you." Porter nodded once. "We leave in the morning. Tonight you can rest at the boarding house. I will arrange everything and stand watch." "You do not have to do that, I know." His gray eyes held hers. "But I am going to." That night, Victoria slept in a small room at the boarding house, her first real bed in weeks. Porter sat in a chair in the hallway outside her door, his rifle across his lap. He dozed lightly, aware of every sound, every movement in the building. No one would get to her, not while he drew breath. When dawn broke over the desert mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Porter knocked gently on Victoria's door. She emerged dressed in the same clothes but looking more rested. He had purchased supplies and borrowed a gentle mare from the livery for her to ride. "Your horse needs more time to heal," he explained as they walked to the stables. "This one is steady and sure-footed. She will get you up the mountain safely." The ride up into the high country was slow and careful. The trail was narrow in places, winding through ponderosa pines and juniper trees, climbing steadily away from the valley floor. Victoria marveled at the change in landscape, from the stark desert beauty of Clifton to the cooler, greener mountain environment. Porter rode ahead, his broad back straight, constantly scanning the terrain. He moved with the confidence of someone who knew every rock and tree. "How long have you lived up here?" Victoria asked during a rest stop. 10 years, give or take." Porter handed her his canteen. "Built the cabin myself." "Do you not get lonely sometimes?" He looked out over the valley below. "But people can be more dangerous than solitude. I learned that the hard way." Victoria wanted to ask more but sensed it was not the time. They continued climbing until finally, in a clearing surrounded by tall pines, she saw the cabin. It was larger than she expected, solidly built from timber and stone, with a covered porch and shuttered windows. A creek ran nearby, and there was a small corral and shed for animals. "It is beautiful," Victoria breathed. Porter dismounted and came to help her down, his strong hands gentle as they steadied her. "It is home, not fancy, but it is safe and warm." Inside, the cabin was surprisingly comfortable. There was a main room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen area with a good stove, and 2 separate bedrooms. The furniture was handmade but well crafted, and everything was neat and organized. "You can have the bedroom there," Porter said, pointing to the smaller of the 2 rooms. "I will take the other. There is a bolt on your door if you want it." Victoria turned to face him. "I am not afraid of you, I know, but the offer stands anyway." He moved to the kitchen, pulling out supplies. "Are you hungry? I can make something." They ate a simple meal of bacon, beans, and fresh bread Porter had brought from town. As they sat at the wooden table, Victoria felt herself beginning to relax for the first time in months. The cabin was quiet except for the crackling of the fire and the sound of the wind in the pines outside. "Why are you helping me?" she asked finally. "The truth." Porter was quiet for a long moment, his hands wrapped around his coffee cup. 8 years ago I was married. Sarah was her name. We had a small ranch down in the valley. One day some men came through looking for work. I hired 3 of them for the summer. His voice grew rough. "I went into town for supplies one day. When I came back, the cabin was on fire. Sarah was inside." Victoria's hand went to her mouth. "Oh God!" The men had tried to rob us, but Sarah fought back. "They killed her and burned the place to cover it up." Porter's jaw clenched. "I tracked them down. It took me 3 months, but I found every one of them. The law did not care about a ranch woman's death, so I delivered my own justice." "You killed them?" "Yes, and I would do it again." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "I came up here afterward because I could not stand to be around people who saw a crime like that and did nothing. But when I saw you today, covered in scars from fighting your own battle, I knew I could not walk away. You remind me of Sarah. She was a fighter too." Victoria felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I am so sorry for what happened to your wife. And I am sorry for what happened to you." Porter reached across the table, carefully taking her hand. "But you are here now. You are alive. And I give you my word no one will hurt you again." The days that followed fell into a gentle rhythm. Victoria's wounds healed slowly, and Porter changed her bandages each morning and evening with careful attention. He taught her the rhythms of mountain life, showing her where to find wild herbs and berries, how to read the weather in the clouds, how to move quietly through the forest. Despite his size and strength, Porter was surprisingly gentle, his big hands capable of delicate work. Victoria found herself watching him more and more. The way his muscles flexed as he chopped wood, the concentration on his face as he repaired a section of the corral fence, the tenderness in his voice when he spoke to his horses. He was unlike any man she had ever known, a perfect blend of dangerous and kind. One evening, about 2 weeks after her arrival, they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky. Victoria had been quiet all day, and Porter could sense something weighing on her mind. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How different everything is here, how peaceful." She touched her bandaged arms, which were healing well. "I keep waiting for something terrible to happen." "Nothing terrible is going to happen. You cannot promise that." "I can promise I will do everything in my power to keep you safe." Porter shifted in his chair to face her. "Victoria, I need you to understand something. What happened to you was not your fault. The fact that you have scars does not make you damaged or less than. It makes you strong." "You really see it that way?" "I do." He reached over and gently touched one of her bandaged arms. "These scars tell me you are a fighter. They tell me you did not give up when things got hard. They tell me you are worth knowing, worth protecting, worth keeping." Victoria felt her breath catch. In the fading light, Porter's face was all angles and shadows, his gray eyes intense. "Porter, I need to tell you something. These feelings I have been having, they scare me almost as much as running did." "What feelings? For you?" The words came out in a rush. "I know it is too soon. I know I am broken and probably not thinking clearly. But every time you look at me, every time you touch me, even just to change bandages, I feel something I have never felt before. Like I am safe and seen and valued all at once." Porter stood and pulled her gently to her feet, his hands on her shoulders. "You are not broken, and I have been feeling the same way. From that first moment when I caught you before you fell, I knew you were special." "How could you know that so quickly?" "The same way you know to trust me when you have every reason not to trust any man." He cupped her face in his large hands, his touch feather light. "Some things you just know in your bones. What do we do about it? We take our time. We let you heal inside and out. We get to know each other." His thumb brushed across her cheek. "And when you are ready, if you still feel this way, we see where it goes." Victoria rose on her toes and kissed him, a gentle press of lips that held more promise than passion. Porter responded carefully, mindful of her healing body and wounded spirit. When they parted, both were breathing a little harder. "I want to be ready," Victoria whispered. "I want to be whole for you. You already are whole. The scars do not change that." Porter pulled her into his arms, holding her against his broad chest. "We have time, all the time in the world." But time, as it turned out, was not entirely on their side. 3 weeks later, Porter was checking his snares in the forest when he spotted movement in the valley below. 3 riders were making their way up the mountain trail, and something about their purposeful movement set off alarm bells in his mind. He ran back to the cabin, his powerful legs eating up the distance in long strides. Victoria was hanging laundry on the line, her arms now mostly healed, the scars pink and new against her skin. "Inside now," Porter said urgently. "We have company coming." Victoria's face went pale. "Is it him?" "I do not know, but I am not taking chances." Porter ushered her inside and bolted the door. He pulled out his rifle and a shotgun, checking both were loaded. "Get in the bedroom and stay away from the windows. If I tell you to run, you go out the back window and head straight up the mountain. There is a cave about half a mile up, hidden behind a waterfall. You remember where I showed you?" "Yes, but Porter, I am not leaving you to face them alone." "You will if I tell you to." His voice was firm but not harsh. "I can handle myself, Victoria, but I need to know you are safe. That is how you help me." Reluctantly, she went to the bedroom, but she left the door open a crack so she could hear. Her heart pounded as the sound of horses grew closer. Through the window, she could see Porter standing on the porch, rifle in hand, looking every inch the mountain man he was. The three riders stopped at the edge of the clearing. The man in front was thick around the middle with a cruel face and greedy eyes. Victoria felt ice flood her veins when she recognized him. Gerald Patterson, her stepfather, had found her. "Can I help you?" Porter called out, his voice carrying easily across the distance. "Looking for a woman," Patterson said. "My stepdaughter. She ran away about a month back. Dark hair, green eyes, about 20 years old. Seen her? Cannot say I have. This is private property. You should move along." Patterson's eyes narrowed. "You sure about that? Because word in town is you brought a woman up here a few weeks back. Matches the description." "The word in town is wrong." Porter's voice was steady, but Victoria could see the tension in his shoulders. "Now I will ask you once more. Leave." One of the other men, younger and meaner looking, snickered. "We do not take orders from mountain trash." The shot rang out so fast Victoria barely saw Porter move. The bullet kicked up dirt inches from the young man's horse, causing it to rear. The rider fought for control, his face suddenly pale. "Next one goes through flesh," Porter said calmly, already working the bolt for another round. "Your choice." Patterson held up a hand. "Now hold on. No need for violence. The girl belongs to me. She is my responsibility. She is a grown woman, not property." Porter's gray eyes were ice cold. "And even if I had seen her, I sure as hell would not turn her over to a man who beats her." "She tell you that? She is a liar. Always has been. Girl is unstable, makes up stories. Her arms told me all I needed to know. Those defensive wounds do not lie." Patterson's face darkened with rage. "You got no right to interfere. This is family business." "It stopped being family business when you put your hands on her. Now you have 3 seconds to turn those horses around." 1. The third man, older and looking less enthusiastic about the confrontation, tugged on Patterson's sleeve. "Gerald, this is not worth it. He will kill us." 2. Patterson stared at Porter for a long moment, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he spat on the ground. "This is not over. I will get the law involved." "You do that." "I am sure they will be very interested in hearing about a man who chased his stepdaughter across Arizona territory, beating her every time he caught her. That does not look good for you." Porter raised the rifle slightly. 3. The older man had already started turning his horse. The younger one followed quickly. Patterson lingered a moment longer, his face twisted with fury, before finally wheeling his mount around. The three of them rode back down the mountain at a pace just short of fleeing. Porter did not move until they were completely out of sight. Only then did he lower the rifle and let out a long breath. Victoria burst from the bedroom, running to him, and he caught her in his arms. "Is he gone? Really gone?" she asked against his chest. "For now." Porter held her tight, one hand stroking her hair, "But he might come back. He strikes me as the type who does not let go easy." "What do we do?" Porter pulled back enough to look at her face. "We make sure you are protected legally. Tomorrow we ride into Clifton and talk to the marshal. We get your story on record, show him your scars, make sure everyone knows what Patterson did. Then he cannot touch you without answering for it. What if the marshal does not believe me? Doc Henley documented your wounds. I witnessed the confrontation today. And I am willing to bet you are not the first person Patterson has hurt. Men like that leave a trail." Porter cupped her face in his hands. "You are not alone in this fight anymore, Victoria. I stand with you." She kissed him then, deeper than before, pouring all her fear and relief and growing love into it. Porter responded in kind, his strong arms encircling her completely, making her feel cherished and protected. When they finally broke apart, both were flushed. "I love you," Victoria said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I know it is fast and probably crazy, but I do. I love you." Porter's face softened into a smile, transforming his rugged features. "It is not crazy. I love you too. Have since that first day when you looked up at me with those green eyes and refused to break." That night, they sat by the fire and Victoria told him everything. About her childhood before her mother remarried, about the gradual change in Patterson after the wedding, about her mother's death and Patterson's escalating violence. Porter listened without interrupting, his hand holding hers, his presence a solid comfort. "My mother knew," Victoria said quietly. "Toward the end, she knew what he was. She told me to leave after she died, to run as far as I could. But I stayed for the funeral, and that was when he made his intentions clear. He said I owed him for all the years he supported me, that I would stay and be a proper daughter or else. Or else he would hurt you. He did hurt me. First time I refused him, he grabbed my arm and twisted until I thought it would break. I fought back, scratched his face. He was so shocked that I had resisted that he let go. That was when I knew I had to leave." Victoria touched her scarred arms. "He caught me the first time outside of Tucson, beat me and dragged me back. I waited a week, stole his money and ran again. The second time, near Safford, I was ready. I had bought a knife in a small town. When he grabbed me, I used it. You did what you had to do to survive. No shame in that. I keep seeing his face when I cut him. The surprise and then the anger. I do not know if I hurt him bad enough to stop him permanently." Porter squeezed her hand. "If he shows up again, he will have me to deal with, and I promise you he will not walk away a second time." The next morning, true to his word, Porter saddled the horses and they rode down to Clifton together. Victoria was nervous about being seen in town, but Porter stayed close, his presence a deterrent to anyone who might cause trouble. They went straight to the marshal's office. Marshal Tom Brennan was a weathered man in his 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. He listened to Victoria's story, examined her scars with Doc Henley's documentation, and took detailed notes. When Porter described the confrontation at the cabin, Brennan's expression grew serious. "Patterson and his men left town heading south this morning," the marshal said. "I can put out word to other lawmen to watch for him, but truth is, unless he actually commits a crime in my jurisdiction, my hands are tied." "He beat her," Porter said, his voice hard. "Multiple times. Her arms are proof. And if he did that here, I could arrest him, but it happened in other towns, other territories. You would need to file charges where the crimes occurred." Brennan looked at Victoria sympathetically. "Miss Pratt, I believe you, and I will do what I can to keep you safe. But the law has limitations." Victoria felt defeat wash over her, but Porter stood and pulled her to her feet. "Then we will do this another way. Thank you for your time, Marshal." Outside, Victoria sagged against the hitching post. "What do we do now? He is never going to stop." "Yes, he will." Porter turned her to face him. "Marry me." Victoria's eyes went wide. "What, marry me? Right now?" "As my wife, you will have legal protection. Patterson will not be able to claim any authority over you. And if he comes near you again, he will be threatening my wife, which gives me legal grounds to defend you with lethal force if necessary." Porter took both her hands in his. "I know it is fast. I know it is not how you probably imagine getting married, but I love you, Victoria. I want you as my wife. Let me protect you the right way. Porter, you cannot marry me just to keep me safe. I am not. I am marrying you because I love you and I want to spend my life with you. The protection is just a benefit." His gray eyes burned with intensity. "Say yes." Victoria's heart raced. Everything was happening so fast, but when she looked at Porter, she knew. She knew with a certainty that defied logic and reason. This man, this strong, gentle mountain man, was her future, her safety, her home. "Yes," she whispered. Yes, I will marry you. They found a traveling preacher staying at the boarding house, a kind-faced man named Reverend Cole, who asked no questions when Porter explained they needed to be married immediately. With Doc Henley and the boarding house owner, Mrs. Dawson, as witnesses, Porter and Victoria were wed in the small parlor that very afternoon. Porter slipped a simple gold band on her finger, one he had carved himself from a nugget he found in the creek years ago. Victoria had nothing to give him in return, but Porter kissed her hand and told her she was gift enough. As they rode back up the mountain that evening, husband and wife, Victoria felt a strange mix of joy and disbelief. A month ago, she had been running for her life, alone and terrified. Now she wore a wedding ring and had a man who looked at her like she was precious. "Are you all right?" Porter asked as they climbed the familiar trail. "I am married," Victoria said, a laugh bubbling up. "I am actually married to you." Porter grinned, the expression boyish and free. "Having second thoughts?" "No, I am having first thoughts about how lucky I am." She reached over and took his hand. "Thank you for saving me, Porter Reid." "Thank you for letting me," he replied softly. That night, in the cabin that was now truly their home, Porter built up the fire and poured them each a small glass of whiskey. They sat together on the rug in front of the hearth, shoulders touching, watching the flames dance. "I should warn you," Porter said, "I am not good at fancy words or romantic gestures. I am just a mountain man. You are everything I need." Victoria turned to him, her green eyes reflecting the firelight. "You see me, scars and all, and you do not look away. That is the most romantic thing anyone has ever done." Porter set down his glass and pulled her into his lap, careful of her still healing arms. "I want you to know something. Those scars do not define you to me. They are part of your story, but they are not all of who you are. You are brave and smart and beautiful. You are strong in ways that have nothing to do with fighting, and I am honored that you chose me." Victoria kissed him then, and this kiss was different from the others. This was a wife kissing her husband, claiming him as hers. Porter responded with a hunger that had been leashed for weeks, his big hands gentle but sure as they explored. They made love there by the fire, tender and slow, learning each other's bodies, building something new and precious between them. Afterward, wrapped in a blanket with Porter's arms around her, Victoria felt peace for the first time since her mother died. "I did not think I would ever feel safe again," she whispered. "You are safe, always." Porter pressed a kiss to her temple. "I will make sure of it." The summer faded into fall, and Victoria settled into her new life. She learned to hunt and fish, to preserve food for winter, to read the mountain the way Porter did. Her scars faded to white lines, badges of survival that she no longer tried to hide. Porter kissed them sometimes, reverently, reminding her that every mark was a testament to her strength. They fell into an easy partnership. Porter taught Victoria to shoot, both rifle and pistol, until she could hit a target with accuracy. She surprised him with her natural talent, and he was proud to see her confidence grow. In turn, Victoria brought warmth and life to the cabin. She planted a garden, sewed curtains, filled the space with small touches that made it feel like a true home. On cool evenings, they would sit on the porch and Porter would play a fiddle he had carved himself, the music sweet and haunting. Victoria would sing along, her voice blending with the wind in the pines. They talked about everything and nothing, building the foundation of a marriage that was based on friendship as much as love. Winter came early that year, the first snow falling in late October. Porter had been right to stock up supplies, and the cabin was cozy and warm as the drifts piled up outside. They spent long evenings by the fire, Victoria reading aloud from the books Porter had collected over the years while he worked on various projects, his hands never idle. It was during a particularly fierce blizzard in December that Patterson made his final appearance. Porter was outside securing the animals when he spotted 3 figures struggling through the snow toward the cabin. He recognized Patterson immediately, and his blood ran cold. He hurried back inside, snow clinging to his coat and beard. "Victoria, they are here. Patterson and his men. Get the rifle and watch the back window. If anything happens to me, you shoot first and ask questions later." "Porter, no, we face this together. We face this smart." He pulled her close for a hard kiss. "I love you, trust me." Victoria took up position at the back window while Porter positioned himself near the front door, his rifle ready. The knock, when it came, was aggressive and demanding. "Reid, open up. I know she is in there." Porter opened the door just wide enough to be seen, blocking the entrance with his body. Patterson looked worse for wear, his face scarred from Victoria's knife, his eyes bloodshot and wild. The 2 men with him looked cold and miserable. "This is private property, Patterson. Leave now." "That woman is mine. You got no right keeping her. That woman is my wife. Legally married with witnesses and paperwork filed in Clifton. She is not yours. She never was." Porter's voice was hard as iron. "You need to let this go and move on." "I will not. She owes me. She owes you nothing." Porter raised the rifle slightly. "And if you do not turn around right now, you will freeze to death out here. That storm is not letting up." One of Patterson's companions, the older man from before, tugged on his sleeve. "Gerald, he is right. We need to get back to town or we will die out here." "I am not leaving without her." "Yes, you are." Victoria's voice rang out clear and strong. She appeared at Porter's shoulder, her own rifle pointed steady at Patterson. "I am not afraid of you anymore, Gerald. You have no power over me. I am married. I am protected. And if you ever come near me again, I will put a bullet in you without hesitation." Patterson stared at her, and for a moment, Victoria saw the calculation in his eyes. He was weighing whether he could rush them, whether he could win. But Porter was larger, armed and clearly capable. And Victoria herself was no longer the frightened girl he had abused. "You are going to regret this," Patterson spat. "Both of you. The only one with regrets will be you if you do not leave." Porter's voice dropped to a deadly calm. "I am giving you one chance to walk away. Take it." The older man was already backing away, and the other companion followed. Patterson lingered for a moment more, his face twisted with impotent rage, before finally turning and stumbling back into the snow. Porter and Victoria watched until the 3 figures disappeared into the white curtain of the storm. Porter closed and bolted the door, then turned to Victoria. She was shaking, but not from fear. It was adrenaline and relief mixed together. He took the rifle gently from her hands and pulled her into his arms. "It is over," he said. "He will not be back. Men like him are cowards at heart. You faced him down, showed him you are not afraid anymore. He has lost his power over you." Victoria clung to him, tears streaming down her face. "I meant it. I would have shot him. I know. I am proud of you." Porter held her as she cried, releasing months of fear and pain. When the tears finally subsided, he carried her to their bedroom and held her close until she fell asleep, exhausted. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving the world buried in white. Porter rode down to Clifton to check with Marshal Brennan and learned that Patterson and his men had left town that same night, heading back toward Tucson. The marshal had put out word to neighboring towns about Patterson's harassment, and several people came forward with stories of his violence and cruelty. Warrants were issued. Patterson would not be bothering Victoria again, and if he did, he would be arrested on sight. When Porter returned to the cabin with the news, Victoria wept with relief. The weight she had been carrying for so long finally lifted. She was free, truly free, Christmas that year was simple but beautiful. Porter cut down a small pine tree and Victoria decorated it with strings of popcorn and berries, paper ornaments she crafted from old newspapers. Porter gave her a new coat he had sewn from deer hide and lined with rabbit fur, soft and warm. Victoria gave him a scarf she had knitted in secret, working on it while he was outside doing chores. They made love on Christmas night with the tree glowing in the corner, and Victoria felt a contentment so profound it brought tears to her eyes. This was what happiness felt like: safety, love, home. As winter gave way to spring, Victoria realized she was pregnant. She told Porter on a morning in late March when the first wildflowers were beginning to bloom in the meadow below the cabin. He lifted her off her feet and spun her around, his face transformed with joy. "A baby," he kept saying. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Victoria asked, though she could see the answer in his face. Happy does not even begin to cover it. Porter set her down gently, his hand going to her still flat stomach. "I am going to be a father. You are going to be a mother. We are going to be a family." The pregnancy was smooth, and Porter was attentive to Victoria's every need. He built a cradle from pine wood, carved with intricate designs of mountains and trees. He made sure Victoria ate well, rested often, and stayed safe. As her belly grew, he would talk to the baby, telling stories and singing songs, his deep voice rumbling against her skin. In November of 1879, Victoria went into labor during the night. Porter rode down to fetch Doc Henley through the early winter snow, and the doctor arrived just in time. The labor was long and hard, but Victoria was strong. When the baby finally arrived, a healthy boy with dark hair and his father's gray eyes, Porter wept openly. "He is perfect," Porter said, holding his son with trembling hands. "You are perfect." They named him Peter after Porter's father. Little Porter Reid was a good baby, content and curious, and Porter was a devoted father. Victoria would watch him with their son, this giant of a man reduced to gentle whispers and careful touches, and fall in love with him all over again. The years that followed were filled with the sweet routine of family life. Porter continued his work as a mountain man, hunting and trapping, but always with Victoria and Peter at the forefront of his mind. Victoria flourished in her role as wife and mother, her scars now just faint lines that she rarely thought about. When Peter was 2, Victoria became pregnant again. This time, she gave birth to a daughter they named Lily, who had her mother's green eyes and stubborn spirit. Porter doted on his little girl, carrying her everywhere on his broad shoulders, making her laugh with silly faces and stories. Life in the mountains was not always easy. There were hard winters and lean times, sickness and worry. But Porter and Victoria faced everything together, their love a constant foundation. They taught their children to be strong and kind, to respect the land, to defend those who could not defend themselves. Victoria never forgot where she came from or what she had survived. On quiet evenings, she would trace the scars on her arms and remember the woman she had been, frightened and alone. But then she would look at Porter, at their children, at the life they had built, and she knew that every scar had been worth it. They had led her here, to this man who saw her scars and recognized a fighter worth keeping. Porter, too, carried scars from his past, though his were mostly invisible. The loss of his first wife had nearly destroyed him, sending him into isolation. But Victoria had brought him back to life, shown him that love was worth risking pain. Their children gave him purpose beyond mere survival. He was no longer just a mountain man. He was a husband, a father, a protector of something precious. When Peter was 8 and Lily was 6, a traveling photographer came through Clifton offering to take family portraits. Porter, who rarely went to town, agreed to take the family down for the occasion. Victoria dressed the children in their best clothes, and Porter put on a clean shirt, his long hair pulled back, his beard neatly trimmed. The photographer set them up outside his studio, and Porter stood behind Victoria with his hands on her shoulders, while the children stood in front. Victoria wore a dress with sleeves that ended just below her elbows, and her scars were visible. The photographer had started to suggest she cover them, but Porter cut him off. No, they stay as they are. Those scars are part of her story, part of our story. Victoria looked up at him with such love that the photographer captured it in the image, a moment of pure connection. When they received the finished portrait weeks later, it became Victoria's most treasured possession. In it, you could see the scars on her arms, clear and unapologetic. You could see Porter's protective stance, his hands gentle on her shoulders. You could see the children, healthy and happy. It was a picture of survival and love, of a family built from broken pieces made whole. As the children grew older, they asked about their mother's scars. Victoria told them the truth, age-appropriate but honest. She told them about her stepfather, about running, about fighting. She told them about meeting their father, about how he had seen her scars and called her a fighter worth keeping. "Your mother is the bravest person I know," Porter would add. "She survived things that would have broken other people. Those scars prove how strong she is." Peter and Lily grew up understanding that scars, whether visible or invisible, were nothing to be ashamed of. They grew up in a home filled with love and respect, where strength was measured in character, not just physical ability. The years continued to pass. Porter's hair began to gray at the temples, and Victoria found laugh lines around her eyes. Their children grew into fine young adults, Peter becoming a skilled hunter like his father, Lily developing a talent for healing and medicine. The cabin expanded with additions over the years, growing to accommodate their family. Patterson never returned. Victoria eventually learned that he had died in a barroom fight in Tucson, killed by another man he had tried to bully. She felt no joy at the news, but there was a sense of final closure. The man who had haunted her nightmares was gone, and he could never hurt anyone else the way he had hurt her. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Porter took Victoria back to the spot where they first met in Clifton. The town had grown over the years, more civilized and less wild, but the water pump was still there. They stood hand in hand, looking at the place where their story had begun. "Do you ever regret it?" Victoria asked. Taking in a stranger with scars all over her arms, Porter turned to her, his gray eyes still as intense as they had been 20 years ago. "Not for a single second. You were the best thing that ever stumbled into my life. I was running. And I caught you, lucky me." He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "Those scars brought you to me. They showed me who you really were, a fighter, a survivor, a woman worth keeping. I would not have survived without you. You would have. You are stronger than you know. But I am glad I got to be there, glad I got to love you through it." Porter cupped her face in his weathered hands. "Every day with you has been a gift, Victoria, every single day." They returned to the mountain that evening, to the cabin filled with memories and love. Their children were grown now, Peter married with a child of his own, Lily studying medicine in the city but visiting often. The cabin was quieter than it had been in years, just the two of them again, but it was a comfortable quiet. Porter still played his fiddle on cool evenings, and Victoria still sang along. They still made love by the fire, their bodies older but their passion undimmed. They still talked for hours, never running out of things to say. The foundation they had built in those early desperate days had proven strong enough to last a lifetime. One evening in late summer, when the aspen trees were just beginning to turn gold, Victoria and Porter sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and orange. The valley below was peaceful, the same view they had looked at together for over 2 decades. "I want you to know something," Victoria said, her hand finding Porter's. "You saved my life that day in Clifton, not just from my stepfather but from despair. You gave me a reason to keep fighting, to believe that there was something worth living for. You saw my scars, and instead of turning away, you stepped closer. That changed everything." Porter squeezed her hand. "You saved my life too. I was existing up here, not living. Just going through the motions, hiding from the world. Then you came along, broken and bleeding and fierce, and you reminded me what it meant to be alive, what it meant to love someone. You gave me a family again, a purpose, a future. We saved each other then. We did. And we have been doing it every day since." Porter turned to her, his weathered face soft with love. "I look at you now and I still see that brave woman who fought her way to freedom, but I also see everything you have become. A mother, a wife, a partner. The scars are still there, but they are just one part of your story now, our story." Victoria leaned her head on his broad shoulder, feeling his strength and warmth. The scars on her arms were faded now, barely visible in the fading light, but they were there and they always would be. Reminders of where she had come from, what she had survived, and the mountain man who had looked at her broken body and declared her worth keeping. As darkness fell, and the stars began to emerge one by one, Porter and Victoria sat together in comfortable silence. Inside the cabin, the fire crackled warmly, welcoming them home. Around them, the mountains stood eternal and strong, guardians of their little piece of heaven. 2 lives that had been shattered by violence and loss had been pieced back together with patience and love. The scars remained, both visible and invisible, but they were no longer wounds. They were simply part of the story, proof that they had fought and survived and found each other in the process. And in that cabin high in the Arizona mountains, surrounded by memories and love, Porter and Victoria Reid lived out their days in the peaceful contentment that comes from having fought for happiness and won. Their love story, born from desperation and violence, had transformed into something beautiful and lasting. The scars that had once marked Victoria as a victim now marked her as a survivor, a fighter, a woman who had refused to be broken. And the mountain man who had recognized her worth from the very beginning stood beside her still, his strong arms a constant shelter, his love an unshakable foundation. They had been through fire and come out stronger. They had faced darkness and created light. And in the end, they had built something that would outlast them both. A legacy of love, courage, and the unbreakable bond between 2 people who had saved each other when it mattered most. The Wild West had been harsh and unforgiving, but it had also brought them together. And as they sat on their porch under the vast Arizona sky, holding hands and watching the world settle into night, both Porter and Victoria knew with absolute certainty that every scar, every struggle, every moment of pain had been worth it to arrive at this perfect peace. Their story was one of survival and redemption, of seeing beauty in broken things, of recognizing that sometimes the people worth keeping are the ones who bear the marks of their battles proudly. Victoria's scars had told Porter she was a fighter from the very first moment, and she had spent every day since proving him right. And so they lived and loved and grew old together in the mountains that had sheltered them. Their children carried forward their lessons of strength and compassion. Their grandchildren played in the meadows where Victoria had once learned to feel safe again. The cabin stood strong through seasons and years, a testament to what Porter had built with his own hands and what they had built together with their hearts. When visitors asked about the scars on Victoria's arms, now faint with age, she would smile and say they were reminders that she had fought for her life and won. And Porter would add, with fierce pride in his voice, that those scars had led her to him, and he had never been more grateful for anything in his life. It was a love story written in scars and strength, in mountain stone and whispered promises, in the quiet moments between two people who understood that true love sees everything, accepts everything, and chooses to stay anyway. Porter Reid had looked at Victoria Pratt's scarred arms and seen a fighter worth keeping, and she had looked into his gray eyes and seen a protector worth trusting. Together, they had built a life that honored both their pasts and their futures, that acknowledged pain without letting it define them, that celebrated survival without forgetting the cost. It was a Wild West love story in the truest sense, raw and real and absolutely unbreakable. And when their time on Earth was done, many years later, they were laid to rest on a hillside overlooking their beloved cabin, their graves marked with simple stones that bore their names and the years they had shared. Peter and Lily, with their own children and grandchildren, gathered to remember the mountain man and the scarred woman who had found each other in the desert heat of Clifton, Arizona, and built something that lasted forever. The legacy of Porter and Victoria Reid lived on in the stories told around fires, in the lessons passed down through generations, in the understanding that love can bloom even in the harshest conditions, and that sometimes the people marked by life's battles are the strongest souls of all. Their cabin still stands in those Arizona mountains, maintained by their descendants, a monument to the truth that scars do not diminish worth, they prove it, that a fighter is always worth keeping, and that when two broken people find each other and choose to heal together, they can create something whole and beautiful and eternal. The Wild West was a place of danger and opportunity, of heartbreak and hope. For Porter and Victoria Reid, it was the backdrop to a love story that proved the power of seeing past the surface, of recognizing strength in survival, of building something precious from painful beginnings. It was a story of scars and second chances, of mountain men and fighting women, of love that refused to be anything less than fierce and true and forever.